Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are well and that you are well rested this afternoon and that you've had your lunches and are ready to go and make it to 3:30. Uh, in continuation of the lecture which I delivered on African diplomacy, I want to respond to what President of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, said or what he asked when he said that we must ask ourselves if we want to be prosperous or not. In turn, I ask the question at a basic level, at a what level, to say if we in South Africa we are saying that we are replacing provinces and national consciousness with what consciousness by creating wall-to-wall municipalities and what. Um, do we as wards want to be prosperous and what can we do to be prosperous? You know, some people are just collecting cans and making the city or even the village to be clean because people passers by can just drop a litter on the side of the road and make the town to be unclean. Of course, the municipality must provide their dustbins everywhere so that and also the collection services so that they can collect all the rubbish and go and burn it or bury it where they can bury it, but also being conscious that even where the dam sites themselves can create pollution for people who live nearby. So I ask myself that, particularly, the municipalities, the local municipalities must ask themselves if they want to be prosperous and if they have plans to bring about that prosperity. When we look at municipalities, local municipalities like Echozini, for example, and Umlalazi, for example, and we look at Nkandla, we look at Nongoma, as those local municipalities, we must ask ourselves, how can we exploit our local resources to bring about tourism, to bring about income generation, to bring about commercial activity, but within a safe environment where stores are not robbed, people who are going to stores are not robbed, and people who are just passing by are not robbed, and also providing accommodation for visitors. If we are saying we have a tourism sector, then people must have enough beds for visitors in different parts of the year. For example, in Umlalazi, if they have a holy mountain, then during that time, accommodation specialists or travel specialists must provide accommodation to those worshippers. That is a resource that you can exploit. You are exploiting a mountain because people want to go and worship in the mountain, but they want to eat as well. They want to buy clothes. They want to buy, groceries and all types of necessities that they need while they are on their journey, on their religious journey. And also, how can we exploit the forests themselves? And because we are surrounded by forests, we are surrounded by sugar cane, we are surrounded by dams, we are surrounded by so many rivers, which bring about some dangers as well to children. What the municipalities were speaking about, particularly during the rainy seasons, that and during the summer, that yes, the school children want to go to the river to swim because it's hot. So are there no crocodiles there in those rivers? Have they been tested as is the water itself safe to even swim in, not let alone to drink it? Of course, these dangers must be removed by municipalities. Where the committees must come up with plans to say, okay, how do we ensure that we have lifeguards in the rivers that we know are frequented by our citizens? And then making sure that we have visible policing, not only visible policing but effective policing as well, because people can obviously bringing in also the issue of a private detective to say, how do you know if this person is a detective of the municipality or the detective from a police station belonging to a particular ward or to a particular municipality when they are wearing their private clothes? How do you determine that when they do not have a badge and maybe the only sign is when they use force? Then you know that. And also looking at from the perspective of private security as well, to what extent can they use force when they are effecting an arrest or when they are trying to control a situation? because of course they do not, unlike the South African police, they are not in the constitution, unless we are looking at them from the security sector perspective, to say, are these people trained by the intelligence services during their training? Maybe even security guards who are guarding petrol stations, for example, even the guarding golf courses, for example, are they trained well enough to respond to dangers? Because if you have places, I'm not saying that laws must favor the rich, but I'm just saying that if the rich exist already, then they must exist in a safe environment. So, meaning that if they are exposed to kidnappings, for example, the establishment must have enough security to prevent that, because rich people have children, they have cousins, and all of that. So, we don't want a situation in our wards and in our municipalities where children are abducted while they were going to school, and then because their parents are rich and then they want a ransom from their parents. We don't want that to happen in our cities, because that can prevent tourism as well. If you know that that area is full of kidnappers, you don't want to send your children there. You don't want to send your children even to go to school there, because there are some people who go to school where their parents don't reside. So meaning that they are unguarded, but they should be guarded by people who are employed to do that kind of job, even if they are in universities, if their parents are mayors or members of parliament, they can be a target, a political target. So because they are children, they might not be aware of the political history of that country, so they must be protected. And of course, President Yoris Museveni spoke about universal primary and secondary education. In South Africa, we look at it from a broader perspective, to look at pre-foundation education, to look at crashes, to say what are children learning in crashes while their parents are away at work, or while they're at home, minding other chores and working in the yard or something like that. What kind of paintings are there? What kind of messages are being sent there? What kind of paintings are inside the classroom? What kind of imaginary world are the children being exposed to, or the real world that they are being exposed to? And how do we ensure conflict resolution within that kind of environment as well? Because you have children of different ages. So how do you manage bullying from a very early age through having people who are minding those children? Of course, uh, universal education is a goal of many organizations such as the United Nations. Um, Already, when the Constitution of South Africa was drafted, people were already literate, they could read and write, but not everyone. So that's why there was a need for people to be educated, for new schools to be built and old schools to be maintained, and making sure that the standard of education is maintained at all times, and that students who are not uh, competent are helped to be competent, because we believe that education can actually improve a person's outcomes in life. And that was even the goal, even in the 1990s, to say, let us help Africa so that Africa becomes developed and educated. But of course, now people want to know the outcomes, that we've been pouring money into Africa to find vaccines, to find cures, and to invest in infrastructure such as roads and obviously in schools. With many donors, even donors from the West, meaning from Europe, members of the European Union. Opening schools, members of faith-based organizations opening schools, and also just international organizations offering schools. For example, having a French school in South Africa, having an American school in South Africa, having a British school in South Africa. So how do we ensure that there is universal education in that context, where there is um, and the issue of class, with people having resources such as money, having resources such as libraries, which are richer than other areas. So those are some of the issues that we must think about when we're looking at universal education. How do you ensure it in an unequal world? Not in a communistic way, but in a realistic way, to say we already have schools where we have high fees by some standard, But then we also had no fee schools. We have low fee schools. So what are you talking about when you talk about universal standard education? Are you going to deliver books to all the schools at the same time? Are you going to make sure that the students are exposed to extramural activities that are similar, offering opportunities that are outside the academic stream, so that they can play football if they're good at football, or they can play rugby if they're good at rugby, and any other sports that they are good at, and even basketball, competing on the African continent to be champions of the basketball field. So there's so many things that we can do with the universal education, but where are the resources to make sure that that actually happens? So that's where the municipalities that I've mentioned, the local municipalities such as Nongoma, such as Mlalazi, such as Jozini, and Nkandla, are failing because they do not have enough budget to deal with these issues. Of course, they don't have many people to deal with, such as the metros like Eteguini, but they also need the resources, and that's what even some African scholars acknowledge, to say unequal development is a real thing, and you can see it with your own eyes because uh, the white man created a civilization, a Western civilization in Africa. So meaning that if you wanted separate development to be uh, an Africanist, you can build an African city, and then, but of course with a lower budget than compared to their budget. So those are some of the inequalities that need to be fixed in order to have universal education. So now, how do we fix that? So those are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves, on top of the questions that President Yoweri Museveni said we must ask ourselves. Of course, he's not the chairperson of SADC anymore. It is Emerson Nangwangwa is going to be the chairperson of the Nana Line movement, as according to what Ramaphosa said, passing the baton to him, or not passing the baton to him, actually congratulating him that he's going to be chairperson of the Nana Line movement. And I don't know what that means, to be unaligned in a situation of conflicts in Gaza and conflicts in the Ukraine, which are long, and conflicts in Syria, and so many conflicts, in Libya, in Cabo Delgado, in Mozambique. So those are some of the things that we have to deal with. How to ensure in universal education in the situation of war, for example. So those are some of the things that Museveni himself must think about, and also his policy makers must think about, if we are really serious about universal primary and secondary education, and also pre-foundation education, and also university education as well. Thank you very much.